There are so many deer, lots of deer, so many deer, that you're wading through them trying to find the one deer. In this type of setting, a whitetail's main defense is sitting up high where he can watch everything and have the wind at his back to his advantage.
The regal ringneck may be king in this stretch of South Dakota, but dodging and weaving through the pointing dogs and shotgun blasts is a healthy population of big whitetail bucks.
Embedded like that, I'm just gonna wait. That's a long shot. Wait and see if he gets up and moves towards me.
Winchester Whitetail Revolution is brought to you by
Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. Otis Technologies, the most advanced gun care system in the world. Code Blue, perfecting the science of hunting. Winchester Rifles and Shotguns, the guns that work.
There are rolling plains in South Dakota, and you just have to find one of these little rolling knobs to give you the elevation and use it as your spotting vantage point.
Smack dab in the middle of South Dakota, among the rolling river breaks, sprawling grasslands, and agricultural fields sits Pierre, the state's oldest settlement. Although relatively flat, this Dakota landscape provides prime habitat for a variety of game species. Not surprisingly, it's also home to the Warne Ranch, one of the Midwest's premier hunting facilities.
Open country hunting can make some hunters just a little nervous, and it's because there are no trees to climb up into, no trees to hide behind. All you have is the flat terrain, the rolling terrain, the grass, and maybe a fence line to hide behind.
Yeah, there's quite a few in that one big bowl down there, you see them. Then you go over to the right a little bit, there's another group over there. Those are they're kind of working their way over there. They usually end up together, it seems like.
They just love these sunflowers.
Huh? Yeah, they can see everything. It doesn't rattle like corn does, you know.
You think that's that big buck right there?
Pretty sure, just by the way he's acting. I would bet on it, you know, pretty much that's him, just by the way he's acting.
Cody Warne has a outstanding pheasant operation. In fact, the pheasants get in the way when you're deer hunting. But Cody's got a little secret himself, and his secret is he loves whitetails. You can tell his place is full of whitetail antlers and mounds. What you'll come to know about Cody is that he knows his whitetails, the whitetails on his property, as well as you might know your own children.
As he'll bed and then he'll get back up and walk around in bed, and he does it. He'll do it all day long. But
a little different. It's not where you sit in a tree and just all of a sudden one pops up and there it is and you shoot it. You know, it's a lot of glassing and spotting scope, open country. You know, never a dull moment. You're always watching deer. I mean, there's not hardly a time out there where you can't look around in a circle and see, you know, 50 to 100, 150 deer at one time. You know, they might be, you know, 100 yards away or 2 miles away, but you can usually see all over.
He's a good one to shoot. I mean, he's visible all the time. You know, you can sit in one spot usually in glass, and he just last 3 days I don't think I've seen him out of this, you know, half section right here. He's always down in there. So
I got a mark on him. I'll work over towards him and see.
Go around downwind of him, and then just kind of come up and just keep blasting. You got all day long.
Okay.
scope him out, and see what he does.
I'll look you up later in the day then.
All right, sounds good.
Cody estimated this deer at probably 5.5 years old, and because he was a 4x5 frame, a deer that he kind of wanted out of the herd, I more than obliged him and said, I'll step up to the plate and take him home if I get the chance. And that's exactly what we set out to do, target this deer. Now that sounds a little tough, especially if you're hunting in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Louisiana, where you got a lot of timber, marshes, swamps, whatever. But out here you can kind of pick deer out and target them.
We don't really go so much by antler inches as we do by age on the deer that we want to harvest. You know, there's a lot of difference in antler size. A lot of people that shoot maybe a 150-inch deer, you know, it might be a 3-year-old deer. Well, those are the ones with the potential to be a Boone and Crockett buck someday. So we really try to watch the age of the deer more than the actual inches of it, and try to just harvest the older bucks that are at least 4 years old, a lot of times 5 years old. And you just want to let them all get that age group, you know, that age structure on them, just so you know exactly what they can become.
That buck did just what we wanted. He went into a little hidey hole. He had some other deer around him, but not too many. But he went into a hidey hole that let me creep up within almost good rifle range. When that buck bedded right behind a dam, I had a lot of decisions to make then. You know, it's the first day of your hunt. Do you get aggressive with a whitetail? Do you just go right into his face, charge in? Or do you wait, sit back, and hope he comes to you? Now, Cody told me if I got in that position at that dam, that those deer generally come to me. And knowing that, and knowing it was a beautiful day out, it was cold, don't get me wrong, it was really cold, even though it didn't look it. But knowing that that deer was coming to me, I decided, first day of my hunt, to hold tight and let him come to me. There's plenty of terrain to hide behind. Anything, even fence lines and haystacks, make for good stalking opportunities.
Let's get to this week's Whitetail Insider, your source for the latest in the ever-changing world of whitetail hunting. Opportunity knocks once in a lifetime. When that big buck appears, will you be ready?
Rob Inkster of Arkansas emailed the Big Buck Zone and told me about a dream buck he shot up in Alberta last fall. Here's the story. November 29th, it was brutally cold around 0. Rob's guide took him to a spot never been hunted all season. Trail cam photos showed several giant bucks in the area. 30 minutes after daylight, Rob caught a flash. He knew it was a big-bodied shooter, but all he could see was a patch of front shoulder. Fired the bullet at that spot, buck never moved. Rob's buck only had a 14-inch inside spread, but man, he made up for it with incredible 50-plus inches of mass. The animal had 21 points and scored around 229 typical. 2 lessons here. Rob was surprised at how few deer he saw on his hunt. That is not uncommon in Western Canada. On a hunt like that, keep the faith and remember, it only takes one. Also, Rob got that deer because he didn't fool around and wait for the whole animal to pop out of the cover. The second you see and confirm a big buck and have a safe open shot at the vitals, pull the trigger. If you wait too long, a giant buck like Rob's dream buck will surely get away. From the Big Buck Zone, I'm Mike Handbag.
On the first morning of my hunt, I could not believe, because it was playing out exactly as Cody had described. That buck came out into a sunflower field. He was bullish. He had all the personality of a prize fighter, and he was not afraid to show himself.
Super dominant buck. He's just visible all the time. Just circles does all the time and in and out, and got him in a pretty good area, you know, where I think we can pick him out in the morning and bed him down, and you know, hopefully we can get him sorted off with some does and put a sneak on him or wait him out, one of the two.
Him bedded like that, I can I'm just gonna wait. That's a long shot. Wait, see if he gets up and moves towards me. The shot was a doable shot if I had crawled maybe another 40 to 100 yards. I would have had no problem making that shot. But it wasn't just him there, and they were spread out in a little semicircle. So I figured if I take that chance, I may bump him out of the country and not see him again for a day or two. He's an older buck. He's no dummy. Even as bold and tough and rough a character he is, a 5.5-year-old deer, he's been there, done that, and he won't tolerate a lot of monkeying around. Something just spooked that big buck. We've been on him since sunrise. He's a big mainframe, 4x5, past his ears, heavy. It's almost 3:30 in the afternoon. That's how long we've been on him. He's been bedded out here just outside of rifle range, but there's a cornfield he was gonna go to. Something spooked him. I think a coyote come down that fence line, but I couldn't see it. Pushed him out into a field. Right now he's right behind a rise. What we're gonna do is make a quick run across the sunflower field, get in a fence line, and go up to him and hopefully intercept him.
These are a couple sheds, some of the sheds that we picked up this spring, Mark. Some of them are some bucks that we've been watching, the ones that you saw. This one I'm sure is one you watched last year.
You know, one thing I've noticed when I've been hunting here is you've got a real specific genetic characteristics in all your antlers, but these G2s are split a lot of times, the G3s, and then you always have double brows. Now this one's actually almost got a triple, but the split brow tine is definitely a characteristic on the Warne Ranch. I know that.
50% I bet that we shoot have a double brow tine. And a lot of it has to do with age too. They just get that way when they get older. But you know, if they're 4.5 years old usually, and they're only a 4-point or a 5x4, you know, that's one you want to shoot.
That's a good cull buck.
Yep, you want to cull him out.
On the first day, I sat around waiting for that buck to come to me. This time I went straight at him. But when I got to the edge of the cornfield, probably about 250 yards away, I stopped again and started second guessing myself. Should I really go into standing corn and try and shoot a deer?
Winchester Whitetail Revolution is brought to you by
Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. Otis Technologies, the most advanced gun care system in the world. Code Blue, perfecting the science of hunting. Winchester Rifles and Shotguns, the guns that work.
Whether or not an animal's in range depends on a multitude of factors. Weather conditions, the type of firearm, and the ability of the shooter all come into play when it's time to make the shot. But how far is too far? Let's join hosts Ron Spomer and Larry Weischen as they debate the ethics of long-distance shooting.
Here's a big problem looming on the horizon, if it's not already here, and that's long-range sniper shooting.
Mr. Spomer, as I recall, the last caliber I saw you shoot, had the capabilities of reaching out there at least 500-600 yards.
The problem is defining what's long-range shooting. For an archer, 50 yards is long range. For someone with a muzzleloader, 250 yards is a long range. Well, what happens when you get a super-duper Magnum that can shoot reasonably out to 600-700 yards and accurately?
We've got the capabilities now in terms of firearms, in terms of optics, in terms of ammunition. It's never been better. Those three categories are the finest they've ever been.
I've done this on the target range with some professionals who were trained military snipers. And it really is remarkable what you can do with a specially tuned rifle and ammunition and a really good scope. But when you try to translate that to deer hunting, I think, or elk hunting or anything else, I think you're really getting into some hot water here.
Best thing that you can do is to learn the capabilities of that gun in terms of getting out and shooting at long ranges, and then learning your capabilities. And whatever your capability goes to, if it's 500 yards that you feel very comfortable with, that you can keep a shot in a spot like that, 500 yards is not too far.
No matter how much you practice and how good you are, you just cannot count on the conditions in nature to be conducive to that long-range shooting. For example, if the wind is blowing, it's going to drift that bullet.
Sure, wind drift becomes a very important factor in long range, but that's where you draw the line in certain instances and you say, okay, I don't feel comfortable with that shot. The wind is blowing 20 miles an hour crosswind. If it weren't blowing, I could hit that animal out at 500.
Once you've taken that long, long shot and screwed it up, what have you got then? You've wasted the resource. It's bad for the hunting image, it's bad for the resource, it's just bad.
Log on to versus.com to tell us where you stand on the debate.
I found a nice high spot on a grassy knoll overlooking the fields and got my spotting scope out and set to work identifying every bedded deer out there. And within an hour or so, I knew my buck wasn't there. Kind of sitting there, scratching my head, wondering what to do. I happened to look towards the west where there was some standing corn.
Looks like a pretty good deer. He's a long ways away. He's got a big frame. Almost looks like that buck we were hunting yesterday.
It was so drought-stricken this year, they just left a lot of the crops up. And there stood a big mature whitetail. Not as the one I'd hoped to shoot, because he was close to a mile away, but as a definitely big-framed, tall-pointed buck. One you just don't turn away from. Fence lines and haystacks make for good stalking opportunities. On the first day, I sat around waiting for that buck to come to me. This time I went straight at him, but when I got to the edge of the cornfield, probably about 250 yards away, I stopped again and started second-guessing myself. Should I really go into standing corn and try and shoot a deer? Or should I wait on the edge and hopefully he'll come out to me? After about an hour of sitting on the edge of that corn, it just hit me. Man, go after this deer. He's right there. I know almost exactly where he's bedded. And God knows what could happen between now and then. Could another coyote come in? Could another buck come rutting in and run him off? It's time to go in and get the job done. And that's the type of hunting I really like. In your face, going after a buck, especially if you know where he's at and what his weaknesses are. His biggest weakness on that day was the wind. We had 20-mile-an-hour plus winds, and that rustling corn totally hid my movement toward him. Any noise I made wasn't being heard, and even motion with the corn stalks swirling around, tumbleweeds blowing, he did not know anything was going on, and I actually spotted his tines, which blended perfectly with the corn 100 yards down the field. Marking that spot, I got low again and started to crawl to the point where I figured I had to be 50, 40, maybe even 30 yards of him. Surprise, surprise, when I got to Glasson, that buck was 25 yards or less exactly in the corn beside me. Just then, a pheasant, must have been right between me and the buck, flushed, and that buck come uncoiled. He sprang from his bed, and everything went on autopilot from then. I got up as fast as I could on the deer and shot without even knowing any of it had happened. Right there.
He's a giant, folks. He's what I've been looking for all fall. Look at that. Big 5x5, barely a 5 on this side. Good brows. and a huge body. This thing is just a monster body.
Cody's hand-picking some of these bucks that aren't quite up to his par and taking them out of the herd to aggressively manage his genetics and his overall antler potential. And trust me, you don't have to, but it's working. He's got some dandy deer. And over the years, his clients that have hunted whitetails here are averaging 150 or better inches of antler on every hunt. And this year, before I got here, one of his clients shot a 180 class deer that any hunter would tip over for because it was the buck of a lifetime.